Welcome back, Disruptors, to another episode of the Point of Impact podcast, the show where my guests and I explore every area of our lives from family, friends, finances, fitness, and fun. I'm your host, Aaron Hale, and today I want to talk to you about achieving our goals and why it's so hard, sometimes it seems, that even though it's very simple and straightforward, and so many other people are achieving great goals, why it's so difficult for us to do seemingly simple things such as lose a few pounds or get promoted or save a few bucks and invest so you can eventually leave that W-2. Or what about becoming just a more intentional parent or spouse? What is it about our goals that makes it seem so difficult to achieve? I've come up with 7 major reasons that achieving goals becomes difficult. Sometimes even getting them started is too much of a challenge for some. And what we can do to mitigate these challenges so we can explode our lives and become the best we possibly can and leave a greater impact. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive right in. First, a lot of people have an idea of what they want, but they really don't have a clear vision of what that is. Maybe they don't realize that what their purpose is, or really which direction they want to go. They don't have a vivid vision of their future, and that's important. Like Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you're probably going to end up somewhere else. So the number one thing is to actually define what your goals are. Where do you want to go? What is that vision of the future? And in Cameron Herold's book, Vivid Vision, he recommends that you write it down, 1, 2, 3 pages worth of what your future looks like. If you can go into the future and actually step right into it, imagine and actually experience all of the vivid colors, the smells. Where are you? Who are you with? What do you look like? What are you doing? All the way down to a granular detail, like the pattern of the look and smell of the desk in your office of that business that you want to start. Sights and sounds on the street as you visit, Italy with your family on, your vacation 3 years from now. What are you and your friends doing to stay fit after to achieve that peak physical fitness that you want to do? All of these kind of things, you put it down. What kind of philanthropist do you want to be like? Where do you want to volunteer, and how much do you want to give? That's what the vivid vision is all about, because this becomes your North Star. Your vivid vision becomes the motivation. It becomes your discipline when motivation is lacking. You always come back and it becomes this touchstone, and it anchors everything else that comes after it. So the very first thing is define your vivid vision. Next, you got to come up with a strategy. A plan. You got to actually have a goal, because it's not enough to just say, I want to be healthier and happier, and I want to give more, and I want to have better experiences with my family, or become financially free. Because a dream without a vision without a goal is just a dream, and a dream without a plan is really just a hallucination. So what you got to do is you got to make some SMART goals. And by SMART, I actually mean the acronym SMART, which means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So an example of a SMART goal, and when I say SMART, I'm also talking about the goals as well as the actions you're taking. make them specific, make them measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For example, if your vision of your future is to be physically fit, then some of your SMART goals might be, an example of a SMART goal might be, I want to lose 30 pounds in the next 6 months to maintain my ideal weight. And I'm going to do that by going to the gym and working out, both on weights and cardio, for at least 30 to 40 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week. I'm also going to measure my macros for every meal, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And when you do these things, you're being more specific. You're locking in a time frame, so there's an urgency to it. When there's more urgency to it, that means there's also more expectance of action to take right away. Plus, you're locking in your lead, not just your lag goals. And by lead and lag goals, a lag goal might be measuring your weight each day. And all that shows is the after effect of your actions. Lead measurements would be tracking your calorie intake and how many times you actually set foot inside the gym, or how many times you lace up and go for a run. Those are lead indicators and lead measurements that will affect your lag measurements and eventually affect how you achieve your goal. Those are your SMART goals. So if you've got a vision and you've got your SMART goals, still you might not be taking action. And the thing is, there are a few reasons why not, but there's a saying in the Special Forces, it's get off the X. And one thing we're not doing is taking action. Getting off the X, and in the military bomb squad EOD field, we say time on target. And essentially the philosophy behind that is the longer you sit still in one place, the higher chance there is, the higher degree of potential for danger, something bad to happen. Or how that relates here is that the longer you sit still, there's the Newton's Newton's first law of kicking ass is a body at rest tends to stay at rest, and a body in motion tends to stay in motion. The law of inertia. All we got to do is take action every single day, not just hope that someday we'll get started. Because just having the vision and a plan doesn't mean you're actually doing anything about it. You got to get started immediately and reduce your time on target, get off the X, and get moving. And so, by taking action, or one step, one degree of motion started right now. You start building up that momentum. And even though inertia says that, the law of inertia says that, if you're at rest, it's hard to get moving. But once you start building up that momentum, building up that inertia, it starts becoming easier and easier to maintain until it's hard. It becomes hard, even impossible for you to stop doing what you're doing and moving towards your goals and crushing all those expectations. So you've got your vision, you've got a plan, and you're starting to take action. So how is it, even if you're doing those things, that sometimes we still fall short of our goals? Well, one of them may be that we become discouraged. Sometimes we try and we fail, and then we don't start again. Or maybe we're even high achievers. Just after they accomplish one goal, they accomplish another and another, and they keep moving the goalpost further and further until they achieve burnout. and they just they become discouraged and stop. One thing that Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy in The Gap in the Game call this being in the gap, where you're only looking at the horizon, where your big goals are so far off and they're so hard that it seems like you're never going to reach them. You got to do is to mitigate this and to avoid being in the game is to look back at all of your accomplishments and see how far you've come. And that's being in the game, where you celebrate the little wins and the little, those 1% actions you take each day. And you take a look back and you see that you've actually come pretty far. You're actually moving towards your goals, and celebrate that. And that'll revitalize your ambition to continue. Another thing that holds people back, and this is one of the other things that keeps us from achieving our goals or not even getting started, is fear. Fear is an emotion. Everybody experiences it, but for some it's paralyzing, and for others it's just another factor that they have to deal with, but they're able to deal with it pretty well and move beyond it. When it comes to achieving your goals, there's an internal fear of being judged, or what we call imposter syndrome. And that's when you say, who am I to ask for a promotion? Who am I to start a podcast? Who am I to become a parent? And what we do is we place a whole lot of judgment on ourselves, and we are often our biggest critics. And one of the reasons a lot of people can get past this, one of the major factors here is that nobody cares. And this is how we get past this imposter syndrome, is that for one, we are incredible people and capable of incredible things, and we're all pretty wise and pretty smart in certain areas, and along the way we can develop them. It's okay. But the other thing is, nobody really cares. They have got their own lives and their own problems, their own goals to deal with, and they're not putting as much weight in your goals and you achieving your success as you are. So the big bad boogie monster of judgment isn't quite so large as you might think. One of the things, and this is one of those things that is actually written in our DNA. It's an evolutionary thing from way back when we were still trying to survive. If you imagine Homo sapiens is still in the animal kingdom before we'd separated ourselves and grown far too civilized. We didn't have claws or fangs or poison or armor, horns, anything to help us hunt and survive and defend ourselves. And the way we as a species actually survived was through our social society, by grouping together and becoming greater than the sum of its parts. But also in developing this, we developed intuition and instinct for the tribe. And we didn't want to do anything that would disappoint the tribe, because exclusion from the group might mean death. So to avoid that, today we still have that fear of being excommunicated from our tribe. So we don't want to stick our necks out. We don't want to raise our voices, and we don't want to be found unworthy for any reason. But like I said, most of the time, you're not being judged by others nearly as much as you're being judged by yourself. So consider that the next time you feel a little bit that stage fright, like the Jerry Seinfeld joked about. Most people have a greater fear of greater fear of public speaking than they do of death. And he said that most people would rather be in the coffin than giving a eulogy at a funeral. It's a pretty funny way to look at it, but it's true. If people, list public speaking over death as their number one fear, that's something that's that's something that's been written into our DNA over many years of living as social creatures. Another fear that holds people back is the fear of failure, of actually, what could come from trying and not succeeding. And that can be just as crippling as just being judged as a failure or thought of as not worthy. Is what happens if I fail? There's a couple of ways I like to look at this, and one of them is, take a list, and here's an exercise you can do. Take a piece of paper, fold it in half lengthwise, and on one side, write all of the potential outcomes of failure. Think of one of your goals, something you haven't done yet, and if you tried and you failed, what would happen? From the most extreme to the most mundane and most benign things, what kind of outcomes would happen if you failed? Then on the other side of the paper, write down all the things that could possibly happen if you succeeded. And just the simple act of that puts a few of these fears in a far better perspective. Because when we think of trying and failing, we automatically go to the most extreme case, and it's usually very unlikely. And even in the worst case scenario, most of the time, it's not all that bad. Plus, when you try and you fail, at least you have more of an opportunity to learn, because there is nothing really gained and nothing really learned from success, trying and not being tested. But if you try and you fail, adapt and overcome, and then you try and fail again, the most successful people in this world are the ones that try, fail, and recover the fastest. So the more you fail, the greater your chances for growth and success in all areas. And then another reason a lot of people don't achieve their goals is because of their associations. Who are they hanging out with? Who are you hanging out with? And how does that relate to becoming a better person, living a better life, and creating impact? Steve Maraboli said that if you hang out with chickens, you're going to start clucking. If you hang out with eagles, you're going to soar. So, are you hanging out with chickens, or are you hanging out with eagles? The power of influence is so great, and it's also very subtle. You don't realize it. But in truth, if you go to hang out with your buddies at the bar, and you all day, or every evening, well, you're going to become a bar rat. If you go to the gym with your friends daily, well, you're going to become fit. That's just what's going to happen. And if you hang out with people who are so if you surround yourself with people who are doing the things that you want to be done, you want to accomplish, you hang out with people who you want to emulate in any areas, there's a greater chance that you will accomplish your goals just by the power of association. So pick your friends wisely. And remember that it works in both directions. And not only does it work in both directions, both good and bad, but you influence others. So go to those places where you can become the person you want to be by hanging out with people who are, have the same traits and the same goals as you. And then you can help them achieve their goals as well. And finally, you're doing everything you can. Everything I've already mentioned. You've got a vivid vision. You've got a plan. You're taking action. Mitigated your fears, and maybe even and you're hanging out with others of great influence. You may even be achieving your goals, but perhaps from day to day you just kind of lose the willpower to start new habits or to achieve those new goals. And the author James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, he spoke of this study with parole judges. These researchers studied parole judges throughout their day in court. They tried to record everything from their political affiliations and character types to how they slept and what they ate. And you know what the biggest factor was when they had these on how they handed down their rulings, whether it was more generous or heavy-handed, and when they had these people's lives, these incarcerated people's lives in their hands, the most influential factor on whether they were generous or not was the time of the day in which this person stepped in front of the judge. No kidding. In the beginning of the day, when the judge was fresh, the judges seemed to have a more generous, handed out more generous rulings. And then when the day dragged on towards middle of the afternoon, towards lunchtime, the judge didn't want to make any bad decisions or make any rock the boat in any way or make any different changes, so was more apt to say no or not grant parole. And then there would be lunch. The judge would get up, go have something to eat, come back, and right after lunch would have it would be more generous again and more lenient with the rulings. And then again, as time waned and it got closer to the end of the business day, the judge's rulings would again become more heavy-handed and less prone to a generous ruling. Why is that? Well, what researchers found is that willpower isn't like a tank that you fill up or deplete. It's more like a muscle, and every decision that somebody makes throughout the day is another repetition, like a workout. And you actually get what's called decision fatigue. So it's estimated that we today make as many as 35,000 decisions every single day. That's an average of 2.5, or a decision every 2.5 seconds. That's a lot of decisions, from deciding whether or not to slap the sleep button or jump out of bed, deciding what kind of clothes you're going to wear, how they're going to match, deciding what you're going to eat, or which route you're going to take to work. All throughout the day, big and little decisions, they're all repetitions, and it's just more of a workout on your brain. So what can you do to make good decisions and avoid decision fatigue when it matters most? Imagine these parolees. When do you think they would want to go before the judge? Well, here are a few ways that you can mitigate decision fatigue, and you start making the best life decisions, creating great habits. One is take some of the decisions you make in the morning, first thing in the morning, and just make them the night before. What it may seem very simple, and even kind of silly, but lay out choose the clothes and lay out your outfit for the next day, and just put it at the foot of your bed, or somewhere where you don't even have to think about it. Then the next morning, you just jump into it. You don't have to spend precious brain power on figuring out what you're going to wear in the morning. Same thing with your breakfast. You can maybe make on the weekends batch up a few breakfast sandwiches. So every morning you just reach into the fridge and grab a sandwich and go. And you can do this. The more you can do this in the morning and just automate your morning, the less decision fatigue you're going to have throughout the day. So first thing you do is take some of those decisions from the morning and put them the night before. Then in the morning, when you are at your most fresh and your decision-making willpower is at its peak, make the most important decisions first thing in the morning. Place what's most important, whatever goal you want to achieve, and make that the first thing you do. It just makes sense. Then simplify and categorize and eliminate the decisions you don't need. And there's a thing called the Eisenhower Matrix, where he said that everything in my life is either important or urgent. But is it really? So you categorize, make a list of all the different decisions and things you have to do throughout the day, and all the tasks you have to do, and you categorize them by whether they're important and urgent, important but not quite as urgent, urgent but not all that important, or neither urgent nor important. And this will tell you what you need to do throughout the day, what you should delegate to others, like virtual assistants or team members or your family members, and the kind of decisions that maybe you don't need to make at all. Maybe the only decision is to delete them from your to-do list. And then take that list, and the next thing you do is turn them into a scheduled event. Don't make them a decision that you have to do, but put them on the calendar so they become habits. And you don't have to decide whether or not to do it or how important it is, because you've already done it. And then you don't make them decisions so much as just habit. The more repetition you do, the more put it on your calendar and turn it into a daily routine, the less decision fatigue you'll have, because it just becomes that habit. Imagine the kind of decision fatigue we would have if we had to decide every single time we came to a door, we had to decide which way to turn it. Or if we went to brush our teeth, we had to decide, had to actually think about which hand to use and how many times to brush which tooth. Eventually, we would just get burnt out on decision making. So with these different factors in mind, you can have the best chance at maintaining your willpower, avoiding decision fatigue, and putting your most important things first and making them making that a regular habit. So these are a few of the methods and a few of the reasons people don't achieve their goals, and how high achievers actually do achieve their goals by addressing those limiting factors. Now, last thing I would say about all of this is that when you go back to the very first thing I mentioned, is that having a vivid vision. I want you to consider why you have the vision you do, and why it's important to live the best life you possibly can. And we'll consider what kind of impact you're actually having on other people's lives. Because when it comes down to it, and we as social, tribal type beings, is that if we can link all of the success, all of this goal achievement back to influencing other people's lives and having an impact on their lives, it will make the greatest motivation and become more of an impact on your own life. And that's really what this is all about. And this entire podcast and achieving great things is how much good we can do for others. So your why in developing yourself and achieving your wildly ambitious goals is to impact others and help them live the best life they can. So with that, I'll ask you if you've had any, if you gained any value from this episode and you want some more of, I'll finish with if you've gotten any value from this and you think others would benefit as well, please give it a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with somebody that you love. Until next time, let's light that fuse and stand by for impact.